Hi, my name is Caroline Poland, and I'm the founder and CEO of Poland and Associates Consulting. And today I want to talk a little bit about grief during COVID-19. The reality is that across the world, we are in unprecedented times that was not expected, and in our own ways, individually and collectively as a whole, we're in the middle of a grieving process. And so part of what I want to do today is explain what grief looks like during this time, as well as give some practical strategies for navigating this. The reality is that grief is a very normal reaction to loss, to uncertainty, to fear. In fact, C.S. Lewis, in his book, A Grief Observed, said, "Nobody told me that grief feels so much like fear." And the reality is that grief and fear share a lot of the same physiological experiences. They both impact us relationally, both impact us emotionally. Learning how to navigate this in this unprecedented time will allow you to experience grief in a healthy way and navigate this really in the best way that you can, understanding that there's no guidebook or rule book for a time like this. So what are we grieving right now? Again, individually and collectively, as communities, as nations, we are grieving a lot of things right now. And some of those things we recognize as grief, and some of those things we might not recognize as grief. So what are we grieving right now? We are grieving business as usual, right? There's been a halt to business as usual. And so we might be grieving the inability to get the things that we need. We might be grieving not being part of a sports team anymore, not being able to go to school. We might be grieving not having some of the comfort items that we might otherwise have. We might be grieving just the connection with our community. We might be grieving the loss of a job, whether that's being able to be there in person or even having lost your job. The financial insecurity and uncertainty that comes with that is certainly grief. For those of you who are seniors, I am so sorry, but there's been a disruption to your school year, and so there's grief in not being able to finish your final year in high school or college or grad school in the way that you had hoped, or not getting a graduation in the way that you wanted. We're grieving the assumptions and the expectations that we once had. Grieving the end of a sports season, or maybe your time as an athlete. All of these things and more, we are grieving at many different levels. And so we might say that we're feeling anxious or frustrated or mad, but underneath all of that is this current of grief that we're experiencing. For those of you who are sick during this time, there might be grief and concern over knowing what your treatment's going to be like. For those who have lost someone during this time, again, my heart goes out to you, whether that is from coronavirus or from something else, because we don't get to grieve in the way that maybe we would have chosen a month or two ago. If we're in a place where funerals aren't allowed, or we have to do a virtual funeral, we don't get the arms of our community around us. And so grief fundamentally just looks and is experienced a little bit differently now than we would have a month ago. So why is it helpful to frame this as grief? Well, once we understand what we're experiencing and what's going on in our bodies, we're actually able to normalize it, right? That the feelings that we're experiencing are quite normal. I often say to people, welcome to your humanness. All we can be is human, and so part of being human is experiencing grief, and again, that is very normal. Once we're able to frame this as grief, we're also able then to meet that grieving part in ways that are helpful for it. Instead of shoving it aside, we're actually able to engage with that part well, so that we can continue to move through grief in a healthy and productive way. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Poland and Associates, and I will be continuing to post videos here during this time on strategies to stay mentally healthy.